guys feel? You feel like you're a part of something bigger than you thought? Okay, that's really what we want to talk about. All right, I'm going to introduce you to somebody. So we're here to talk about perspectives. How many of you have taken perspectives? Okay, how many of you do not know what perspectives is? What? All right. And I think we have one more person coming in, and I think that's Michelle, but we'll find out. Okay, so I'm going to introduce you to a gentleman, and I'll let him kind of tell a little bit of his story. But I met him in a perspectives class, and had no idea what the Lord had in this guy's life. And that was in 2019, so you figure the math on that. And so, Dawn, I'm going to have you kind of get up. I'm going to have you share just a little bit. What did you think before perspectives? And then kind of tell me where you are today. Like, what has God done in your life? So Dawn's actually going to be kind of like my co-presenter for today.
Well, hi, everybody. My name's Don Sullivan, and I'm from the foothills of California, near Yosemite, up Highway 108. Belong to a church called Word of Life Fellowship. I was saved in the 60s and 70s. Actually, I was saved in the 70s in the Jesus movement. Have anybody heard of the Jesus movement? Oh, yeah. Right? It was a real thing. It actually took place.
Were any of you there?
Yeah. And then for the next 40 plus years, I was in the heat of it. My heart, when I got saved, I went all out. And later on in my walk, we had a ministry called Lighthouse Ministries, and we began to feed the needy and serve the homeless, and we've been doing that for a number of years, doing with a pantry and a community dinner. And we boasted, thankfully we were boasting, of our 60 and 70 salvations per year, consecutively, year after year after year. Most churches could not boast that we had 60 or 70 salvations this year. And the Father gently spoke to me and he said, "That's wonderful, son. Now how many disciples have you made?" And I was silent before him. And there was an opportunity, kind of just popped up that way, because this is what the Father does. He has a way of teaching us his way. That doesn't mean that we're going to be obedient to do it his way. We just do what we think is the right way. And then something happens in your life and perspective showed up. There was a perspectives course in Tuolumne County, and I heard about it. My heart was for missions. So I went, and my, I had a paradigm shift. Everything I thought I knew, and I knew it all about evangelism and missions and the heart of the Father, I had to throw out. I had to get rid of most of that because there was a real paradigm shift. And that was in 2019. Now, we're boasting now of the disciple making, and that is not a overnight situation. Making disciples and of friendships and having encounters with people, that is something that it's all relational, and that's what our relationship is with God. It's all relational. So he brought his heart to me in perspectives, changed it, and now, and in that, my wife, who was not my wife, I just got married 2 months ago, to Kim Sullivan in the back there in the yellow. She said to me, she says, "Don," she didn't call me honey at that time, she says, "Don, you need to go and meet that guy. You need to go and talk to him because I know your heart." And I said, "Kim, I don't need to meet the guy." And she said, "No, Don, you need to meet the guy." And then she went out on her own and she said, "David, I'd like you to introduce yourself to Don over here. He needs to meet you in front of me." And so naturally we became acquainted, and through that relationship, and that was at a perspectives meeting, okay? We brought him up to Sonora, where Lighthouse Ministries is working in our community, and we got involved. But we got involved with making of disciples, and he's been mentoring me now ever since. And thus, together he called me and he said, "Hey Don, you know how perspectives goes, how important it is." I said, "I sure do." He says, "What would you think about possibly coming with me and learning how to coordinate a perspectives course?" And I says, "Count me in." And that's how we got acquainted, and that's where my heart is, and now you know the rest of the story. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. So like Don said, there was a lot that he had to unlearn to be able to kind of relearn a little bit more in God's way. We also have Mark here, and Mark is, so I'll be honest. I taught perspectives before I knew what perspectives was, and I actually they asked me, "Could you please take the course?" And so I ended up taking the course with Mark up in Placerville a couple of times actually, because COVID hit and during the first one. So coordination, how easy is it?
It's a challenge. I think it's always a challenge to coordinate, because you have to find other people to help you. You can't
Yes.
do it all yourself.
Yes.
And yeah, just getting the word out and getting, I would say, the mobilization side of it to get to other churches to buy into it, or to send people to it. That's really tough.
Yeah.
So many churches, they have their own programs, and they don't really want outside programs, and that's a big challenge.
Yeah.
So, the first time we did the course, Green Valley was very, very supportive. So we had 62 students to start with, and then COVID hit, and we could barely get 20 to do online learning after that. So that was tough. And then the second time we did it, Green Valley had a pastoral change and weren't near as supportive, and we only had 13 students. So it was, they were high quality students, but it was a little disappointing that we didn't have more.
And I would say, why is it disappointing? Like, what is it that just makes perspective so transformational?
Well, I think one is it's 15 weeks, and people have time to process.
Yes.
And to process at a deeper level. You can go to a seminar over a weekend and get all pumped up, and
Easy come, easy go.
by the end of the next week, you've kind of lost most of it because you aren't kind of thinking and chewing on it. And I think perspectives gives that time. Each week you're hearing stuff and you got to chew on it and think about it, and it doesn't let up.
Yeah.
Next week, where you could kind of slough it off if it was just a weekend. You can't, because now it's back and God's in your face again saying, what about my global purpose? So I think that's a positive aspect of it.
And I think it's great. So Mark's actually going to be one of the instructors in the spring. And Mark has a very special task. He gets to straddle the weeks of Easter. So it's a tougher ask, but it's great that he's local, so he's able to kind of do that, and it's not like there's he has to be here for 2 weeks. And so, yeah, Mark didn't know I was going to bring him into this, and actually Mark's not Mike, so the people online won't actually hear what you're saying. But there is this issue of when you go to a seminar, you go to a concert, you go to a Lise Palau thing, and you have this emotional hit. And then what happens when we come down off that mountain? Like my high school kids, I'll drive them home from youth group. Hey, what did the pastor talk about? Oh, no. Really? You don't know any? Oh, I heard a funny story. Oh, yeah, what was the funny story? Nothing even related. I'm like, you just left the group. You can't remember what the pastor talked about now. right? So there's this issue of impact, okay? Perspectives. How do you guys know J.D. Greer? I don't know if you guys are coming from Baptist churches. So I always love to bring a nice Baptist preacher. But he definitely says, perspectives in his experience, right, is the single best discipleship course to mobilize the church to God's mission. Do we even know the people who mobilize? Who mobilized William Carey? Right? Who got him into the scripture to be able to hear God's word? Right? Who mobilized Betsy Stockton, the first African-American woman ever sent as a missionary? Right? There are going to be pivotal people who someone is going to be processing with. They were mobilized. And they don't even get near the credit the person who actually went got. And chances are they've mobilized a couple people in that way. You guys know Dr. Tony Evans? So in his church, he says they value their partnership with perspectives. Their leadership and discipleship tools have helped their members discover how they can effectively become a part of the global Christian movement. How many people in your church are global Christians? How many of them are only like a Christian in their home? The moment they hit the street corner, I don't know nothing about that. Right? They get to work. Oh, don't talk about that. Right? They're barely a neighborhood Christian sometimes, much less to the end of their city line, much less to the end of their state. Okay? So we're talking about this issue of global Christianity. In perspectives, it's going to focus on 5 main outcomes. Okay? One of them clearly is going. But here's the deal. If everybody went, who's going to pay for that? So that's really not a viable option. Not everybody goes. And not everybody goes and stays. That's the trends that we're seeing this time, is that people are going and there's a lot of shifting that happens. Then there's this issue of sending. A lot of people would love to be goers, but they also love to be senders. And who is actually sent well? I can tell you a ton of stories of people not being sent well because the church was not prepared to do that. I have done many of sessions at my church on member care. We call it CareCon. And I fly in people who do nothing but Barnabas coaching for workers to help the church understand what the worker goes through, to know how to relate to them. Because when they come back, they feel like foreigners in their own home. They don't know how to get along. Welcoming, right? How many people that weren't born in America live in this area? Lots. Interesting fact. What is the ratio of foreign-born people that live in Sacramento?
4 to 10. So 40%.
40% of the people who live in Sacramento were not even born in the nation, much less Sacramento. So how international is our neighborhood? How international is this room? Look at this room. We've got people from all over. Most of us are kind of a little bit on the pale side, and then there's this issue of mobilizing, right? Because how hard is it as a pastor to mobilize week and week and week and week? Who's mobilizing the pastor? Who's cheering the pastor on? Who's encouraging that person to continue on? And why does it have to fall on the professional Christian? Why cannot the senior members of the church also be mobilizers? Why cannot returning workers also be mobilizers? Why cannot people who have done a lot of short-term trips also be mobilizers to stay, to buy that one-way ticket? My church just recently did a men's conference, and I had lunch with the speaker, and he talked about, I've planted 140 churches all over the world. And I said, really? I said, how long did that take? Like, how long were your trips? He goes, 2 weeks. I said, you spent 2 weeks in planting the church? And he goes, yeah. And I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure there were people already working before you got there. Oh, well, of course. I said, so maybe they planted the church, and you just showed up to cut the ribbon. Right? Now, he didn't like that, and I get that. But I asked him, I said, hey, have you ever bought a one-way ticket? He said, no, that'd be crazy. I said, that's God. God's crazy. He tells us to buy one-way tickets. And I'll tell you what, when you have that returning ticket, you know what you can tolerate? A whole lot. And when you have that one-way ticket, and you have nothing, after you've done that flight, you got nothing in your hand, what do you tolerate? Not so much. And then praying. Okay, those on their knees for the nations. And this is one of the big challenges that we're going to do in Perspectives. We're going to make prayer fun. Some of you have already kind of experienced some of the prayer models I've done. I just did it with a Club 4-5 at my church. We did musical chairs. Those kids straight prayed for an hour, and when they were done, they said, Pastor, can we do it again? I looked at the pastor, I said, it's up to you. You carry it from here. I'll get them started. You carry that torch. 31% increase of those those that have taken perspectives had a 31% increase of those that decided to live a very strategic lifestyle. So we're talking, 3 out of 10 right here decided to change their life because of what they heard in this class. Pretty impactful. Going for the nations, right? So gaining that new understanding of God's heart for the nations. Before perspectives, 36% of the people said, yeah, I know God's heart for the nations. By the time they were done, I don't know who the 6% was. Maybe they didn't finish the class. I'm not sure. But, look at that increase. Could you imagine what it would look like if your church had an increase of attendance like that? Yeah, I go 36% of the time. Every third week I show up. To, I'm there every week. I'm invested. Believe it or not, 19% of all the alumni that have been a part of Perspectives have gone to serve on the mission field 6 months or more. Find me a program that has a statistic better than that. And you're going to say, okay, Dave, you just made these numbers up. On your table, you're going to see this little book. And this little book is produced by, it is called Core 4 Research. It's a third-party research company that from 2005 to 2010 researched all the prospective students, all of them, came up with these numbers. Now, you might say, well, Dave, that was a different time and place, right? 2005 in America. Yes, Lawrence?
I got an example of the first class that I coordinated.
Okay, Lawrence has an example. He's going to tell us the story.
There was a lady who was a 5th grade teacher. She was thinking of retiring in about 5 years. She had never been out of California. She took the course. The next year, she was in Iraq as a missionary.
Wow.
So you're saying it works. This is true. That ended up being, look at this. In this 6-year span, 7,600 missionaries came out of this course. Find me an organization that has this many missionaries, for one. Right? Much less something in a 5-year span that has been that effective. When it comes to gaining new understanding of the role of the local church, like what's the role of the local church and also mission agencies? Why do I need a mission agency? How many pastors have actually lived overseas? Not too many. How many pastors have actually planted a church? Even less. They're normally on someone else's legacy. But those that understood the roles of the church before Perspectives versus after Perspectives, pretty transformational, more than double. Those that understood the role of mission agencies, because a lot of people don't understand, why do I need an agency? They just kind of skip off the top of my funds, right? Well, when you've been abducted, you know who shows up. Also, when you have a child and you don't know how to homeschool them, where do you get help? Mission agency, right? When you're struggling because you just witnessed a horrific event in your country, who do you talk to? Pastor doesn't know how to help you. He's dealt with tragedy, but sometimes you need it from somebody who's experienced, who's been there, who's kind of had that in their life and can walk you through the turmoil and the suffering that the world really has. We don't see the levels of suffering of what you'll see when you're actually there. And so another added benefit, I didn't even know this until the statistic, that giving to the local church actually increased 27%. Find me a program that will actually increase your tithing by 27%. Why? Because they understand that the God of all resources can multiply. Okay? And so they're a fool to hang on to what they cannot keep, to gain something that they cannot lose. I think it was Eliot that said that. And then obviously, yeah. Yeah. And then obviously there was definitely an increase to mission agencies, typically supporting those who are going to go. All of a sudden, people understood, well, can't you get a job over there? and make $150 a month? You know, I paid my staff $150 a month in my business when I was in India. And I paid them 25% more than I should have because they kind of had to help me out a lot. $150 a month. How many of us think that we could actually live on that level of standard in a third world country? I don't even care how far you think a dollar will go. $150 does not go very far, especially when fuel over there before all of this was $6 a gallon. Welcoming. So originally Simon from ISI was going to be part of this presentation. He's actually doing this in Davis actually right now with some pastors. But one of the effects that we've seen from Perspectives is the fact that we are a multinational city. So there are people here who have never heard the gospel, who may be here for a short period of time. I'll tell you this. Do you guys know where the leader of Boko Haram went to school? Do you know what he went to school for? Do you know that he has a doctorate from USC in mathematics? Wow. So he spent how long in this country? And nobody invested. Nobody reached out to this foreigner, to this African American. Nobody invited him into a home to share a meal, to share the gospel, to share love, to share the answer to his pain. And here we are today with that statistic saying, what could have changed had we have stepped up? What could be different had we have done what the Lord had asked us to do from the first place, right? So before Perspectives, 19% of the people understood this. After, 4 times as much. A 23% increased involvement with international communities at home, which produced 9,200 welcomers, right? People who are willing to go to their local college, their local university, to help with the foreign students that are going to be doing the next 4 years, going to be changing their worldview. Mobilizing. Those with a strong understanding of the different roles in the Great Commission went from 25% to 91%. So it's kind of like, if this is your fuel tank before, here's your fuel tank after. When you're looking for people to help you, well, there's your staff before, there's your staff after. You kind of get what we're talking about? When people really spend time, specific, dedicated time to understand this overarching message of the Lord, all of a sudden they're just compelled. They're compelled to respond. It actually produced 21% of those who took Perspectives became mobilizers, and it produced 8,400 mobilizers. Pretty incredible. Praying. If I were to invite you guys to a 12-hour prayer meeting, how many of you guys would show up? Right? We're going to do musical chairs. I know I've done some prayer events with Dawn, and they've been fun. Like all of a sudden, 2, 3, 4 hours go by. You don't even realize you've been praying that long. Why? Because you've been having a great time. You've been connecting with the Lord. You've been just praying in different ways and different, for different things. And prayer doesn't have to be a pennant. Like, it can be fun. It should be fun. We're talking to the Lord of the universe, right? We're communing with him. It shouldn't be like grating yourself across a cheese grater, right? It should be fun. You should spend an hour and go, wow, I need to do that again, like right now. Could you imagine what it would be like if we did that at church? If we said, hey, Friday night, we're going to do a prayer thing, and everyone's like, yeah. Like, that is my prayer, that we would do that. So before Perspectives, okay, 33% of the people understood that. But now, nearly, like 1 in 8 really understand, 7 in 8 really understand what prayer actually does. This actually, 66 of the people claimed that they did increase not just prayer, but frequent prayer, which they had 26,000 committed prayer warriors during that 6-year period. So Perspectives, if you have not taken it, it's broken down into four little aspects. 1 is biblical, 2 is historical, 3 is cultural, 4th is strategic. Okay? And in the biblical side, it's the largest section, so it gets five sets of classes. And so, Is the living God a missional God? Is he? Like, where does mission start in the Bible? Where
In the
does it start?
beginning.
What do you, huh?
In the beginning.
Okay, is it Genesis 1 or is it a little bit later?
A little bit later.
A little bit later. Genesis 12? Right? When he's calling Abraham and he's like, hey, I got a job for you. You need to go somewhere. When does mission stop in the gospel, in the Bible? Yeah, when does it stop? Yes, exactly. Right when we get to Revelations, Jesus is like, we're done. I'm coming back. I got the rest of this, right? So here's the deal. People say, I can't read the Bible in a year. Really? Take missions out, you certainly can. You got 12 chapters of Genesis and the book of Revelation. You can do that. So here's the deal. If you understood that missions was everything that God's talking about in his scripture, we should be talking about missions all the time. But when we do talk about missions, very few people respond to that. Okay? The book of Jonah. What was Jonah? He's a missionary. Like most of us, we don't want to go. But we're compelled to go. God makes a pretty compelling argument. And then we talk about this issue of glory. Right? C.S. Lewis talks a little bit about the weight of glory. But there's this thing that God is interested in, is glory. Right? And even in our context here in America, it doesn't mean much to us. We don't really get what glory is. So that's why this is paramount to perspectives. Until you get why God is so interested in glory, you're not going to get anything that God's doing. You don't understand, okay, so his name is going to be known for, his own glory. Isaiah 46:10, and he says, be still and know that I am God, I think. Check my address. And he says, be still and know that I am God. But here's the deal. We stop at that. There's actually another half to that verse. For my name will be great among the nations. That's why we need to be still and know who God is, because he wants his name to be great among the nations. If we cut out missions, you know what we get? We get only half the story. When we
I don't
get
think that would make a good Hobby Lobby sign.
True. It's for those that are going to enjoy heaven. They might get there and be like, oh, it was all about glory. Then we spend this time in historical. And I love this part because it talks about the pioneers. It talks about the era of missions, the expansion of the Christian movement. And we're going to have some people that are on our speaker list that are phenomenal. I have two people. One has taught over 1,000 courses, and one has taught just under 800. So we're talking, I think they pretty much wrote the book. Like they were in the book. I know that. I know one of them has written sections in it. And so there's this historical part. Cultural. Cultural is a big deal about missions, right? Right? I always tell people, I said, what's your favorite car? And they're like, oh, a Ferrari. I said, great. I'm going to go buy you a Ferrari, and I'm going to wrap the keys in a dirty diaper and give it to you. And they're like, I don't want it. But it's your car. It's the car you want. You won't endure a dirty diaper to get the car keys out? And they're like, no. I go, but sometimes we package the gospel that way. Sometimes we take the one thing they desperately want and need, and we wrap it in a package that's not appealing. And so understanding these bridges of love, right? Understanding that why does a person do this? It's on the basis of love. Okay, not like I love pizza, but like the way that God loves us. Strategic, right? Not everyone's a strategic thinker, but God is. He is a super strategic thinker. All right, I'm going to skip a couple of these little platitudes that are going on. John Piper is a big fan of this. If you guys have a chance, there is an interesting podcast on perspectives. That's actually, if you guys are podcasters, I know everybody has a different way that they like to intake information. So there is a really cool podcast if you guys are interested. Now I'm going to click the screen, but I can't go back to it. We're going to do a little interesting video. How many of you guys know what a movement is? Yeah? What's a movement?
It's a spontaneous expansion. In missions, oftentimes it's talked about at mission churches. It involves rapid discipleship rather than church planting.
You ever seen one?
Yeah.
Yeah? You ever seen one happen in 3 minutes?
Happened in 3 minutes?
Uh-huh.
No.
Okay, we're going to watch this video on what happens when a movement happens within 3 minutes.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut and it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point, and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute, you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is overglorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in.
You just built a church. Right? Okay. I'm going to go back to this screen just to kind of leave it there. So here's where we're at, right? Who wants to validate the leader from being a lone nut? And who wants to be that first follower, right? That's basically what we're looking at. Perspectives can't happen without other people jumping in to say, yes, I've done it, I've experienced it, other people need to do it, and show that it's not crazy to spend 15 weeks to let the Lord change them, right? People spend way more going to a gym, and it doesn't last. But doing this changes you forever, and it's the best kind of forever, okay? So on your tables, you're going to see these little pamphlets. If you guys want to, I don't have too many of them, but you're welcome to take some of these home. There is more information than what I shared. There's way more information. You're happy to look at that. There are little flyers on your table. This is what you'll see if you go to perspectives.org and you're like, okay, where is Perspectives happening? Yes, I did get Don to jump in. He is going to be part of our 3 Perspectives loop. We'll be doing one in Davis with Simon. Simon and David Luang, they're going to be doing a Perspectives in Davis. Then we're going to be doing a Perspectives in Rancho right on the freeway at River City Christian. And then also Don is going to be doing a Perspectives in Sonora. And so all of our teachers get to go up the hill and get to, go to the snow and see that beautiful part of the Mother Lode. And so that is going to be what the spring looks like. We want you guys to know, because chances are you want your church to really be more missional. You want people in your life to be a little bit more missional. You don't like being the lone nut. And so sometimes you need to say, hey, I got to demonstrate what it takes to follow. I've got to demonstrate what it takes to show up, to do something different. And so sometimes it's bringing people and it's letting them experience what goes on. The information has gotten way better between 2005 and 2010 to what it is now. It's a whole new book. It's a whole new it is actually really exciting. So if you took it 20 years ago, I guarantee you're going to learn a lot of new stuff, because many things have changed in 20 years, such as the amount of movements we have in the Muslim world. Okay, all of that stuff is new in 20 years. If you haven't taken it, chances are a refresher's due. Okay, so I'm going to stop.